Good evening, and welcome to Nox Historia. Tonight, we travel to the world of Renaissance Italy. So let yourself arrive here slowly. There is no hurry now, and there is nowhere else you need to be. Set the day down, all of it, the whole weight of it, the way you might set down a heavy bag just inside the door, knowing you will not need to pick it up again until morning. Let your shoulders come away from your ears. Let your breath find its own slow tide, in and out, and let the room around you soften at its edges. There is nothing left to do tonight, nothing to solve, nothing to hold. Everything that felt urgent an hour ago can wait until the sun comes back for it. Come with me instead, gently, into another evening, one that ended and settled and fell asleep more than 500 years ago, and has been waiting quietly for you ever since. We are going to walk into the Italy of the Renaissance, the Rinascita, the rebirth, as they would later call it, and more precisely into the city of Florence in the 1480s, in the long golden years when a man named Lorenzo de Medici, whom the city called Il Magnifico, the Magnificent, moved among its streets as its first citizen. And here is something most people never quite learn, tucked away beneath the famous paintings and the famous names. This was not some vast imperial capital. Florence was a small city, perhaps 60,000 souls, a place you could cross on foot in the time it takes a candle to burn down a finger's width. And yet, inside those close red walls, quietly, almost without noticing, a handful of bankers and weavers, painters and scholars were drawing the shape of the modern world, the way we picture space, the way we keep our money, the way we remember the ancient past. We are walking tonight straight into that workshop. You do not need to remember any of this if you happen to fall asleep. That is exactly what this is for. Let the names drift past like lamplight on water. Let the dates go. If you wake tomorrow with only a warmth and a red rooftop or two, that is more than enough. This journey will carry you whether you follow it or not. So, let us begin softly on the edge of a Florentine evening. Imagine the year is somewhere in the middle of the 1480s. Lorenzo is alive and well and not yet old. The city is at peace this evening, prosperous and unhurried. To understand where we are standing, hold this gently in your mind. Everything you may have heard of the Renaissance as a sudden dawn breaking over 1,000 years, set that aside. The truth is kinder and stranger. Learning had never truly stopped. Monks had been copying the old books all along. What is happening here, now, in these years, is that a small, dazzling community of people has fallen in love with the ancient world all over again, and in loving it is half inventing our own. See how much is being quietly worked out within these walls. In the painters' workshops, they have lately learned the trick of perspective, how to make a flat wooden panel open like a window into a room that seems to go back and back into real distance. In the counting houses of the merchants, clerks are keeping their ledgers by a new double method, every sum written down twice, once owed and once owned, so that the books always balance, the very bones of the accounting the whole world still keeps tonight. And in candlelit studies, scholars are bent over the recovered words of Plato and Cicero, brought back into the light after long centuries. Perspective, banking, the ancient mind remembered, and rising over it all, a dome that no one alive had known how to build until one stubborn goldsmith worked it out. That is the city breathing quietly around us. Let us go and see it. And notice as we go how lightly all of this rests on the world. Florence calls itself a republic, and in its own careful way it is one. Councils and guilds and elected men, a city that governs itself. Lorenzo holds no crown and wears no armor. He governs, when he governs, by friendship and letters and the slow gravity of his family's name, a merchant among merchants who happens to steer the whole. There are no marble emperors here, no vast palaces of 1,000 rooms. It is a city of stone counting houses and workshops and modest churches, run by men who wear long wool gowns and know the price of thread. That is part of the quiet marvel of it, that so much of what we still live by should have been drawn softly in so ordinary a place. Let us stand first on a little rise beyond the walls and look at Florence as the sun goes down. The light at this hour is the color of honey and old wine. It comes in low and level across the Tuscan hills, and it finds the city and turns it warm. See how the rooftops answer, thousands of them, close packed, all laid with those curved terracotta tiles, the color of clay and embers, a whole sea of soft, dark red, catching the last of the sun and holding it. From up here, the city looks almost small, almost tender, a compact huddle of towers and roofs inside its ring of walls, the green hills leaning in on every side, a place you feel you could hold in 2 cupped hands. Around the whole of it runs the wall, a long ring of pale stone with its watchtowers and its gates, and beyond the wall the country begins at once. No straggling suburbs, only the sudden green of vineyards and olive groves climbing the slopes, and here and there the slim, dark exclamation of a cypress tree standing against the fading sky. The land and the city meet cleanly, the way a coin meets its rim. A cart is coming in late through one of the gates below, small and slow, its driver hunched and homeward. The hills breathe out the day's warmth. Everything is turning, without hurry, toward the dark. And down the middle of it lies the river, the Arno, gone quiet now for the evening. At this hour it does not rush or hurry anywhere. It lies still and flat and gleaming, a long ribbon of poured gold laid through the heart of the city, holding the sky's last colors upside down on its glassy skin. The low bridges cross it, dark against the shine, and the water simply rests, mirror calm, as if it too were settling for the night. It is a strange and lovely thing to hold in the mind, that a place so small should hold so much. You could walk from one gate of Florence to the other before you grew tired, and yet packed into that short walk is more painting, more building, more quiet invention than almost anywhere on earth in this century. Small on foot, vast in what it carries. Keep your eyes on those red roofs a moment longer, softening now as the light goes, and let one thing rise above them. Look up, past the rooftops, to the great shape that stands over the whole city. There it is, the dome. It lifts above every other roof and tower, huge and calm and rounded against the deepening sky, curved like the shell of some enormous, patient egg. This is the dome of the cathedral, Santa Maria del Fiore, and even now, 5.5 centuries after it was closed, it remains the largest brick dome ever raised by human hands. Nothing built of masonry has ever spanned wider. See how it simply owns the dusk, reddish, ribbed with white stone, rising to the pale lantern at its crown, so vast that the city seems gathered around its feet like children around a hearth. And here is the wonder of it, the thing to turn over slowly as the sky darkens. When the men of Florence built their cathedral, they left a hole at the top so wide that no one knew how to roof it. For years it stood open to the rain, a magnificent church with the sky where its crown should be. The span was too great for the old way of building, which needed a whole forest of timber scaffolding raised inside to hold the stones until the arch could close. No such forest existed. And then a goldsmith mind, not a builder by trade, a short, sharp-tempered, brilliant man named Filippo Brunelleschi, said he could raise the dome without that great wooden centering at all. And he did. He built it as two shells, one inside the other, a lighter outer skin over a strong inner one, with room to climb between them. You can still climb it today, up between the two walls, and people do. He laid the bricks in a herringbone pattern, angled and interlocked, so that each new ring of brick helped hold itself up as it went, curving inward without any full timber frame beneath it to catch it. Ring by ring, over years, it closed itself in the air. We know all this because the cathedral still stands and is still walked through and climbed every single day, and because a Florentine named Giorgio Vasari later wrote the whole story down. Hold that in the quiet. An impossible roof, worked out in one determined mind, still standing over the city tonight as the first stars come. Now let us come down off the hill, through a gate, and into the streets themselves, just as the lamps are being lit. The evening has gone blue and soft between the tall stone houses, and here and there a lamp comes alight in a doorway or a window, small warm coins of light laid down along the darkening lanes. The streets are narrow, and the buildings lean close and high on either side, so that walking here feels like moving through warm canyons of golden stone. Somewhere a shutter closes, somewhere a voice calls another in for the evening. The day's work is folding itself away. And so much of that work in this city is cloth. This is the secret engine beneath all the beauty. Florence is, before it is anything else, a city of wool. Through these streets by day move the men of the Arte della Lana, the great wool guild, and around them a whole patient army of hands, the ones who wash and comb and card the raw fleece, the ones who spin it into thread, the weavers at their looms, and above all the dyers, whose work has turned the lanes down by the river these many colors. English and Spanish wool comes in raw and rough. It goes out as some of the finest, richest cloth in all Europe, dyed deep reds and warm golds, and a blue worth its weight in coin. See how the beauty and the trade are braided together. The paintings, the palaces, the dome itself, all of it was paid for thread by this. The cloth bought the beauty. And it is not one trade, but a whole city of them, each with its guild, its hall, its patron saint, and its place in the order of things. There are the woolmen and the silkmen, the bankers and the dyers, the apothecaries, under whose broad guild the painters are quietly counted, the leather workers, the makers of fine things in wood and stone. A boy is born into this world, and soon enough bound over to a master to learn a craft with his hands, sweeping the floor and grinding the colors long before he is trusted with the work itself. That is how skill passes down here, not from books, but from the elbow of an older man, year upon patient year, until the young hand knows what the old hand knows. You can feel it even now in the evening quiet as the last bales are stacked and the last shutters drawn. The sense of a city that has grown rich by the steady patience of its hands, and has chosen to spend that richness on things that will outlast it. A lamp gutters and steadies in a doorway. The wool sleeps in its warehouses, and we walk on deeper in. Let us come now to the heart of the city, into one of its wide stone squares as the evening crowd begins to thin. The lane opens without warning into a broad open piazza, and after the narrow streets, the sudden space feels like a held breath let go. Around its edges rise the palazzi, the great townhouses of the merchant families, built like gentle fortresses of rough honey-brown stone, their high walls studded with iron rings and torch brackets, their upper windows just now glowing amber as the households light their evening lamps. These are proud, plain, powerful buildings, and by day their ground floors murmur with business, but the day's business is ending now. See how the square empties slowly and without hurry. A last few figures cross it and are gone into the side streets. A servant with a covered basket, two men in long dark gowns finishing a conversation as they walk, a boy running an errand home before the dark comes fully down. Their footsteps sound clear on the stone and then fade. The market stalls that stood here in the day are folded and carried away, and the swept space lies open under the first faint stars, wide and calm and cooling. There is a particular peace in a great square at this hour, when the crowd has thinned to almost nothing, and the stones are giving back the day's warmth into the blue air. The palazzi stand watch around the edges with their lit windows. High above, the dome holds the last grey light, and the whole small, brilliant city, its wool and its gold, its painters and its scholars, its bankers bent over their balanced books, begins quietly to turn toward the night. Let us not leave yet. Let us stay a while longer in the warm streets of Florence and see how the workshops keep their lamps burning after dark. Let us turn now down one of the narrow side streets, away from the last of the piazza's murmur, to where a single lamp still burns behind an open shutter. This is a bottega, a workshop, and there are hundreds of them threaded through Florence like veins, each one a small warm room where the beautiful things of this city are quietly made. The door stands ajar to let the day's warmth out and the cool night in. Step gently closer and look. Inside, the master painter's shop smells of linseed and pine, of egg and dust, and something faintly sweet. Along one wall stand jars and little horn cups of color, each one ground by hand. Lapis lazuli for the deep blues, carried all the way from the mountains of the east and worth more ounce for ounce than gold. Malachite green, the warm earths, ochre and umber and sienna, named for the very hills you will drift through later tonight. Nothing here comes ready-made. Every color on every panel in Florence began as a stone or an earth or a dried plant, crushed on a slab of porphyry until it became powder, and then dust, and then light. And the boy doing the grinding, for it is always a boy at first, is an apprentice, bound to the master for years by a contract his father signed. He sleeps in the shop, he sweeps it, and lays the fires, and prepares the wooden panels with layer upon patient layer of white gesso, sanding each one smooth as ivory. He grinds the pigments and learns their tempers. Only slowly, over seasons, is he allowed a brush at all. First to lay a background, then a drapery, at last a hand or a face. This is how a painter is made here, not born, but built, the way you might raise a wall, one true course at a time. And a shop like this makes far more than paintings. A Florentine bottega is a place of all trades at once. The master may cast a bronze one week and gild an altarpiece the next, paint a wedding chest, design a banner for a festival, model a saint in clay, mend a nobleman's silver. The boys learn a little of everything before they learn to be anything at all, and out of that patient, many-handed craft the wonders of the city are turned, one commission at a time. There is no line here between the artist and the artisan. The words mean the same thing. A painter is a man who is very good with his hands, trained the way a carpenter or a goldsmith is trained, and honored for the skill the way you would honor any fine maker. There is one such workshop not far from where we stand, kept by a master named Andrea del Verrocchio. Sculptor, goldsmith, painter, a maker of everything. And here, if we could lift the years like a curtain, we would find a young man at one of the benches. His name is Leonardo, from the little town of Vinci in the hills. Set aside gently the picture you carry of him, the old sage with the long white beard, the deep-lined face of the drawings. That Leonardo comes much later. In these years he is barely 30, quick and handsome and endlessly curious, a young craftsman among other young craftsmen, learning his trade in a Florentine shop like this one. The legend is still all ahead of him. Tonight he is only a gifted young man by lamplight, and a lamp does not know what it lights. Let us stay a moment with what is on these benches, because something new is being drawn here, a way of seeing the world that will outlast every one of these painters and reach, in the end, all the way to you. Look at the panel drying on the easel. See how the tiled floor in the painting seems to run away from you, backward and inward, the tiles shrinking as they go until they gather at a single point far off, as though the whole room had been folded toward one distant door. That single point is the secret. It is called the vanishing point, and everything in the picture obeys it. This is linear perspective, and it is very nearly new. Not a century before, the goldsmith Filippo Brunelleschi, the same restless mind who would go on to raise the great dome above this city, worked out the rule of it and demonstrated it with a small painted panel and a mirror, a quiet piece of theater that showed how a flat surface could be made to hold real depth. And then a scholar named Leon Battista Alberti wrote it down, patiently, in a treatise called On Painting, finished in the year 1435, the first book to explain, line by geometric line, how to make the deep world sit believably on a flat one, where the lines should go, how things must shrink with distance, and by exactly how much. It sounds like a small thing, a trick of ruled lines. It is not. Before this, a painter showed you a holy scene the way a child draws importance, the saint large because he matters, the servant small because he does not, everything floating in a gold and timeless nowhere. After this, a painting becomes a window, a single, particular view seen by a single pair of eyes standing in a single spot at one true moment. The picture stops being a symbol and becomes a place you could step into. It is one of the quietest revolutions ever worked, and it happened on benches like these, by lamps like this one. And here is the gentle wonder of it. You live inside this rule and have never once had to think about it. Every photograph you have ever taken obeys the vanishing point. Every film, every window rendered in a game, every long straight road that narrows to nothing on the horizon in a picture, all of it keeps the law that was set down here, in Florence, in a treatise finished in 1435. the way your own eyes are at this very moment, letting the far wall of your room fall away toward a point you never notice. They drew the world the way we still see it. Rest a while in that. Somewhere across the city tonight, in another such shop, a painter named Sandro Botticelli is at work, and the seasons he is painting are these very seasons. Only lately he has finished a great panel of a garden in spring, the primavera, we would call it, where Venus stands calm among the orange trees, and the graces turn in a slow dance, and Flora scatters flowers from her gathered gown, and the whole grove seems to breathe with a soft, unhurried air. It is a picture with no straight story, only a mood, the return of spring, the world made gentle and green again, painted for a Medici cousin's house. And in a year or two more he will set down the one the world can never forget, a goddess newborn, standing on a great shell, drifting toward a quiet shore, while the winds breathe her in, and a handmaid reaches to wrap her in a flowered cloak. The birth of Venus. There is no rushing water in it, only a calm, pale sea, and a still gold light. The whole thing hushed, dreamlike, tender. These are not old paintings tonight. They are the newest things in Florence, the paint on some of them barely dry, made in the very years we are drifting through. And 5 centuries from now, people will still travel across the world and stand silent in front of them. Now let us turn from the making of beautiful things to the thing that pays for them, because the two are never far apart in this city. Reach in your mind into a merchant's purse and take out a single coin. It is small, and it is gold, and it is heavier in the hand than you expect. This is the florin. On one face, the lily of Florence, on the other, John the Baptist, the city's patron saint. It has been struck here in this same design since the year 1252, for well over 200 years, unchanged, the same weight of the same fine gold, coin after coin after coin. And that steadiness is the whole of its power. In an age when most rulers quietly shaved the gold from their money whenever they needed more, the florin stayed honest, always the same, always trusted. And so it traveled. A merchant in London, a banker in Bruges, a trader in the ports of the Levant far to the east, could all take a Florentine florin and know exactly what it was worth, without weighing it, without doubting it. It became the coin the whole known world agreed on, a small gold promise kept so faithfully for so long that men in countries that had never seen Florence trusted it more than their own king's silver. All of that beauty in the workshops, all of that lapis carried from the mountains, much of it was bought in the end with this quiet, reliable little coin. And behind the coin stands the bank, above all, the Bank of the Medici, the family whose careful hand guides this whole republic from behind the scenes. Their wealth did not come from a mine or a conquest. It came from a ledger. Let us look softly at how it was kept, because it is one of the most far-reaching inventions of this age, and almost no one thinks of it as an invention at all.
The merchants of Florence keep their books by a method they call the writing of Venice, or simply double entry. Every single transaction is written down not once but twice, once as a debit, once as a matching credit, what came in set against what went out, each entry answered by its equal on the facing page. If a bale of English wool is bought, the wool is written on one side and the money on the other, and the two must always balance. Should the columns ever fail to agree, the merchant knows at once that somewhere an error hides, and he hunts it down before he sleeps. Picture the ledger itself, open on the desk, two tall pages facing each other, ruled into neat columns, and a hand moving down them by lamplight, entering each sum in its proper place, the incomings on one side, the outgoings on the other, every line answered by its twin. There is a deep calm in a book kept this way. Nothing can slip through unseen. Nothing can be quietly lost or quietly taken, because everything must appear twice and the two halves must meet. The book itself becomes a kind of conscience, patient and exact, that will not let a single coin go unaccounted. It seems a small housekeeping habit. It is in truth an X-ray for money. A way of seeing, at a glance, the whole living body of a business, what it owns, what it owes, whether it is truly growing or only seeming to. The Medici, keeping such books across branches in half the cities of Europe, could sit in Florence and read the health of an enterprise 1,000 miles away. Merchants here are already using this method daily in these years, quietly, as a matter of course. It is only a little later, in 1494, that a mild Franciscan friar and mathematician named Luca Pacioli will gather the method into a printed book and lay it out for all to learn. And even he will say plainly that he did not invent it, only wrote down what the merchants of Venice and Florence had long done. The ledger balanced here by lamplight is the same ledger the entire modern world still keeps. Every company on earth still writes each entry twice. Enough of coins and columns. It is late now, and even in a city that thinks so hard, bodies grow hungry and warm rooms call. Let us follow the smell of wood smoke and cooking to a low doorway spilling soft yellow light onto the stones. An osteria, a simple supper house where the day's work is set down and the evening is let in. Inside it is warm and close and gently loud with the murmur of easy talk. There are long wooden tables worn smooth by years of elbows, and clay lamps, and a fire settling into embers at the far end. And here at these tables is the true marvel of Florence, plainer than any painting. A wool merchant in a fine dark gown sits within arm's reach of the very apprentice who ground the pigments tonight. A banker leans to hear a stonemason's joke. A young painter, perhaps, breaks bread beside an old dyer whose hands are stained blue to the wrist. There is bread and beans cooked slow with oil and sage, and a little roast fowl and rough red wine cut with water, poured without ceremony. The food is simple. Florentines are proud of a certain plainness at the table, even the rich ones, and it is set down without fuss, eaten with the fingers and a wooden spoon, wiped up with the last of the bread. No one hurries. The evening has that particular ease of work well finished, of a long day laid down at last. This is the quiet engine of the whole miracle, right here at these tables. A city small enough that the man who makes the beauty and the man who pays for it eat their supper in the same low room, and know each other's faces, and argue and laugh together into the night. The talk drifts unhurried. A price, a marriage, a new panel someone has seen, the strange, clever things young Leonardo is said to be sketching. The lamps burn low, the wine warms. Outside, the great dome stands dark against the stars, and the workshops sleep, and the coins rest in their purses, and the whole extraordinary little city breathes slowly toward its rest, and we too drift on, gently, into the deeper quiet of the night. And now let us step out of the lamplit street altogether, away from the last of the market voices, and turn in through a wide stone doorway into the house of a Florentine merchant. The door is heavy, studded. the kind that has stood 100 years and will stand 100 more. And as it closes softly behind us, the whole clamor of the city grows small and far, the way a sound grows small when you sink a little further into sleep. We are in the courtyard now, the cortile, the quiet heart around which these Florentine houses are built. It is a square of calm, open to the darkening sky, ringed by slender columns, a wellhead in one corner, and a stone bench worn smooth by years of sitting. The last warmth of the day still lifts from the paving underfoot. Somewhere above, a lamp has been lit in an upper window, and its glow falls gold across the stone, and the shadows are long and soft and kind. These merchant families lived well, but not showily, at least not here in the private heart of the house. The great wealth of Florence was cloth and coin and credit, and a prosperous wool merchant or a banker of the middling sort would raise a house of 3 stories around a courtyard just like this one, plain and strong on the outside, gracious and human within. The ground floor for the business and the storerooms, the piano nobile above for the family, the servants and the kitchen higher still. Such a house was a small world entire, holding a whole household within its walls, the master and his wife, their children, an aunt or a widowed mother, the apprentices and the maids and the manservant, all under one roof, all folded into the day's slow round. On the outer wall by the door there is an iron ring for tethering a horse, and a stone bench where the men of the family sit in the cool of the evening to watch the street. But we have come inside, past all that, into the still center, where only the family goes. Feel how the house holds the warmth in. After the open evening streets, the courtyard gathers you, and the walls are thick, and the air is still. Rest here a moment on the smooth stone bench and let your shoulders lower. There is nowhere further to walk tonight. We have come in from the city, and the city can wait outside the door until morning. Let us climb the wide stone stair now, unhurried, into the living rooms of the house where the family has gathered for the evening. Here the hearth is burning low and steady, a good fire of olive wood and oak, and the light of it moves warm and orange on the plastered walls and the beamed ceiling. The heat reaches you as you step in, and it is the oldest comfort there is. A Florentine home of these years is simpler than we might imagine. There is not much furniture, but what there is has been made to last a lifetime and beyond. A long table of dark wood, a few high-backed chairs, and along the wall the cassone, the great carved marriage chest, painted on its front panel with some gentle scene, and holding the household linen folded within. A cupboard of pewter and a little maiolica, the glazed earthenware in soft blues and yellows. Nothing is wasted, and everything is cared for. The evening meal is being set out, plain and good. Bread, of course, the coarse, unsalted Tuscan bread that has not changed in all the centuries since. A soup of beans and bread and oil, a little cheese, some salted fish or a few eggs, and wine cut with water in a plain glass jug. Meat is for feast days and for the rich. But the table is warm, and the family is together, and the master of the house breaks the bread, and the talk is low and easy, the small talk of the day's small doings. And here are the children, 3 of them, drowsy now in the firelight. The littlest has been carried up from the courtyard already half asleep, and lies against a nurse's shoulder. The older 2 sit near the hearth, watching the flames, the way children have always watched flames, their eyes going slow, their heads beginning to nod. Soon they will be gathered up and carried to bed, and the house will grow quieter still. It is a life lived close to the rhythm of the light. There is no way to hold back the dark but with fire and candle and oil, and so the household rises with the dawn and winds down with the dusk, and by this hour the day's real work is long done. The wool is at the workshop, the ledgers are closed in the counting room below, and here at the top of the house there is only warmth and food and the low voices of people who have known one another all their lives. Let that plain contentment settle over you as you stand in the doorway, unseen in the moving firelight. Let us leave the hearth now and the sleepy warmth of the family, and go softly up one more flight along a passage to a small door standing a little open with candlelight leaking gold around its edge. This is the studiolo, the scholar's study, the private room where a learned man keeps his books and does his thinking, and it is the still center of the whole house. It is a small room, and it is meant to be small, a cell for the mind, paneled in dark wood, just large enough for a writing desk, a chair, a reading stand, and shelves. A single candle burns in a holder of brass, and a second stands ready beside it, and their light pools warm and steady on the desk, and falls away into soft shadow at the edges of the room. The air smells of beeswax and of ink, and of the particular dry sweetness of old vellum and new paper. And here, on the desk and the shelves around it, is something that tells you exactly what age you have wandered into. Books lie side by side of two entirely different kinds. Some are manuscripts, written out by hand, page upon page of careful script on soft vellum, a capital letter touched with blue and gold, the whole thing the patient work of many months by some copyist bent over his desk. And others, lying right beside them, are printed, their letters marching in even, identical rows, black and crisp, page after page, all exactly alike, made not by a hand, but by a press. For this is the very hinge of the years, when the old way and the new way rest together on the same desk, neither yet having pushed the other aside. The scholar reaches for whichever he needs, and thinks nothing of it. Run your eye along the shelf, and let it rest there in the small gold room, among the quiet books, while the candle burns steady, and the house sleeps below. Take down one of the volumes and open it in the candlelight, and let me tell you what a Florentine scholar treasured most in these years. For the great passion of this age, the thing that set hearts racing in a way we can scarcely picture now, was the recovery of the ancient world, the finding and copying and translating of the books of the Greeks and the Romans, so long half forgotten.
They called themselves, some of them, the lovers of this wisdom, and we call the movement humanism, the study of the humane letters, of poetry and history and philosophy and the old languages, the belief that in the writings of the ancients lay a mirror in which a person might learn to be more fully and more nobly human. And nowhere was this love deeper than in Florence under the Medici in these very years. Think of one man, quietly at work, perhaps in a room much like this one, Marsilio Ficino, a physician's son, whom Cosimo de Medici, the grandfather of Lorenzo, had set a great task, to bring the complete works of Plato, the whole of that vast Greek mind, dialogue by dialogue, across into Latin, so that the scholars of the West might read them entire for 1,000 years. He labors at it for years, and around the year 1484 the thing is done, the complete Plato rendered into Latin, a labor it is hard even to imagine. And around Ficino gathers a loose and happy company,
Not a school with walls and rules, but a circle of friends who love these same books, who meet at the Medici villa in the hills and read together and argue gently and dine, and who fondly call themselves, in memory of Plato's own gathering, the Platonic Academy. Imagine it, to open a dialogue that has slept for centuries, and to hear suddenly a voice from 1,000 years before speaking to you across all that dark as clearly as a friend across the table. That was the wonder of it. Not a dry thing at all, but a kind of falling in love with the recovered mind of the ancient world. And how did these words come down to them at all, to be loved so? That is the gentler, stranger truth, and it is worth setting down softly here, for it corrects a thing many people believe. We are often told that before this rebirth there lay 1,000 years of total darkness, that learning simply stopped, and then all at once switched back on. But it was never so. Those very texts that Ficino now turned into Latin, the Plato and the Cicero and the Virgil, the scholars so prized, they survived the long centuries, because all through them patient hands had copied them out and kept them safe. In the quiet scriptoria of the monasteries, monk after monk, generation after generation, had bent over their desks and copied the old books by hand, letter by letter, to preserve them. The pagan poets alongside the scripture, saved not because they always understood them, but because they knew them to be precious. The light was never wholly out. It was carried, low and steady, down a long corridor of years, from hand to patient hand, and set down at last on this very desk. The Renaissance did not light a lamp in an empty dark room. It found the lamp still burning and turned it up. And now, in these years, the copying by hand is giving way to something new and faster. The printing press has come to Italy, first to the monastery of Subiaco in the hills near Rome in the year 1465, where 2 German printers set up the first press on Italian soil, and then above all to Venice, whose presses would pour out books by the thousand, until that watery city became the print capital of all Europe. A book that once took a scribe half a year could now be struck off many times over in a matter of days. And so books grew cheaper, and as they grew cheaper, they spread out beyond the narrow circle of the very rich and the cloister, into the houses of merchants like this one, and slowly the reading of them spread too. This is one of the quiet, great turnings of the world, happening softly in rooms like this in these very years. Knowledge loosed from its chains and beginning to travel, and no one in the room quite aware that everything is changing. And yet notice on this one desk before us how gently the change comes. The scholar has not thrown out his beautiful hand-copied books because the printed ones have arrived. He keeps them both and loves them both, and reaches now for the one and now for the other. The new thing does not arrive with a crash and sweep the old away. It settles in beside it quietly, and for a while they share the shelf, the patient work of the monk and the quick work of the press, resting together in the candlelight, as though they had always belonged side by side. But that is enough of the great turnings of the world for one night. The candle has burned low, and the ideas can rest on the shelf where we found them, safe until morning. Let us set the book gently down and leave the little gold room to its silence. Below us now the whole house is settling towards sleep. The children are long abed, tucked warm beneath their coverlets. The last of the supper things have been cleared, and the table wiped, and the fire on the hearth has fallen to a bed of embers, glowing deep red and soft under a grey film of ash, giving out its last low warmth into the room. A servant moves through the rooms, damping the lamps one by one, and the pools of light wink out, and the house grows dim and quiet and safe. Here in the study, someone reaches out at last and lowers the flame of the candle, pinching it down until only the smallest bead of light remains, and then that too is gone, and a thread of pale smoke rises and curls and fades into the dark. The room lets go of its gold. Outside the window the courtyard lies in shadow, the wellhead and the stone bench silvered faintly now by a moon that has climbed above the rooftops while we read. The whole house breathes slow. The thick walls hold the warmth close, and the city beyond them has gone quiet, and everyone under this roof, the merchant and his wife, the sleeping children, the scholar with his mind at last at rest, is sliding gently down toward morning. There is nothing left to do. The doors are barred, the fire is banked, the books are closed. And as this good house settles into its sleep, let the night lift us softly up and out once more, over the barred door and the silvered courtyard, out above the darkened roofs of Florence, for the road is waiting under the stars, and the night is already turning. And so we leave the house to its sleep, and the city to its lamps, and we step out through the gate and onto the open road, where the night is wide and the stars are already turning. Behind us, Florence folds itself away into the dark, the great dome only a shape now against a paler sky, a rounded shoulder of the town settling down for the night. Ahead of us, the road runs south, and there is nowhere we must be, and no hurry to arrive. Let the road carry you. It is an old road, worn smooth by centuries of feet and hooves and cartwheels, and it climbs gently out of the valley of the Arno into the hills that everyone who has ever seen a painting of Tuscany already carries somewhere in their memory. The dark shapes rising on either side are the low round hills, and stitched along their crests, black against the blue-black sky, stand the cypress trees, tall and narrow and still, like slow green flames that have forgotten how to move. They line the road and mark the farm tracks, and gather in little companies around the villas, and in the moonlight they are simply darker verticals in a soft and darkening world. To either side, the land is quilted the way it has been quilted for 1,000 years. The vine and the olive, the terraced slope and the ploughed field, the small stone farmhouse with one gold window still burning, and then, as we pass, going dark. This is the country that fed the city we have left, the oil and the wine and the wheat that came up this same road to Florence's markets, and the wool on the backs of the sheep that grazed these hillsides, wool that the city spun and dyed and wove into the cloth that paid for everything. Out here, under the stars, you can feel how small that dazzling city really was, and how it sat like a jewel in the wide, dark palm of the land. There is nothing to listen for now but the soft wind moving through the grass, and somewhere far off the low, unbothered sound of the country at night. The road unspools ahead of you, pale in the starlight, curving over one rise and down into the hollow beyond, and up again. You do not have to walk it, simply let it move beneath you, the way a road moves in a dream, without effort, without distance, the miles gathering themselves up quietly behind you, while the same great sky wheels slowly overhead. Overhead the stars are close and many, thick as they only ever are far from any city's lamps, and they turn about the pole as men in these years still believe the whole of heaven turns about the still and settled earth. For this is the age before the astronomers rearranged the sky, and the night above you is a great slow wheel, calm and certain, its patterns the same that guided every traveler down this road before you. There is a comfort in that older sky, in its patient turning, and you need do nothing beneath it but breathe and let the road carry you south a little further into the dark. And as the night carries us south, the hills begin to lift a little higher, and the cypresses draw back, and far ahead, where the road has been climbing all this while without our quite noticing, a new shape begins to gather itself out of the dark. A town, not sprawling low along a river as Florence does, but raised up, gathered onto the high ground, a crown of faint lights strung along the ridgelines against the stars. This is Siena, and she has been waiting on her hills for the traveler from the north for a very long time. See how she is built. Where Florence lies open in its bowl of hills, Siena sits astride 3 ridges that meet like the spokes of a wheel, and the town has grown along their spines, so that her streets rise and fall, and her houses climb one upon another's shoulders, all warm brick the color of the earth itself, that deep burnt orange-brown the world would come to call by her very name, Siena, the pigment ground from this Tuscan clay. By day it glows. By this late hour it is only a deeper darkness, with here and there a lit window, a lantern in a doorway, the pale thread of a lane climbing between black walls toward the ridge. Let us drift up into her, quietly, the way you would enter a room where someone is already sleeping. The gate, the rising street, the tall, narrow houses leaning close overhead until only a ribbon of stars shows between the roofs. Siena is older than Florence's golden age and prouder, and for a long time she was Florence's great rival, a banking city too, a city of merchants and wool and its own good coin, that had once dreamed of being the greatest city in Tuscany, and had built as though it truly would be. You can feel that old ambition in the stones, even now, in the dark, in the sheer reach of the towers overhead. And then the lane opens and the walls fall away on every side, and you come out quite suddenly into the great open heart of the town. And here you must stop, and simply stand a moment, and let your eyes adjust to the wideness of it.
For this is the Piazza del Campo, and there is no other square in all the world quite like it. It is shaped like a shell, like the inside of a scallop, a great shallow fan of paving that does not lie flat, but tilts, sloping gently down from the high rim where you are standing towards its lowest point at the far side, where the ground gathers to a single deep note. The whole vast floor of it is laid in warm brick, and set into that brick, running down like the ribs of the shell, like the spokes of a half-buried wheel, are 9 pale lines of pale stone that divide the fan into 9 curving segments. 9 for the 9, the council of merchants who governed Siena in the years this square was made, and who laid their own number into the ground for every citizen to walk across and remember. By day, this shell holds the whole life of the town, the market, the crowds, the great bareback horse race called the Palio that thunders round its curving edge in summer afternoons, each of the town's neighborhoods riding for its honor amid a sea of color and noise. But that is a thing of daylight and high summer, and it is not what we have come for. We have come by night, when the Campo is swept clean and empty and still, a wide, pale bowl of moonlight, and the only movement is the slow turning of the stars above its open rim, and the only sound the hush of a town asleep around it. Stand a while at the high rim and let the size of it settle on you. It was laid out in these curving 9 some 700 years ago, and paved not long after, and it has held the gaze of the town towards its center ever since, a piece of ground shaped less like a market than like a great open theater, or the palm of a cupped hand held up to catch the light. The warm brick has been walked so smooth by so many generations that in the moonlight the whole shell has a faint, soft sheen, as though the square itself were dreaming. Follow the slope of the shell down with your eye to where it gathers at the lowest edge, and there stands the reason the whole square tilts towards it, the Palazzo Pubblico, the town hall, the people's palace, long and low and battlemented in the same warm brick, with its tall Gothic windows dark and quiet now. Everything about the Campo bends towards this building, kneels towards it, the way the ground itself leans in. It was the seat of the government of Siena, and the men who built it meant the very paving to teach a lesson, that the city, all of it, inclines towards its common house, its shared and public life. And from one corner of that palace there rises straight up into the night the slenderest of towers. Let your eye climb it. The Torre del Mangia, they call it, finished in the middle of the 14th century, more than 100 years before the night we are walking through. A shaft of brick so tall and so slim it seems it should not stand at all, lifting a pale crown of white battlements high above the town, higher than the cathedral on its hill, so that from anywhere in Siena you might look up and find it against the sky. It was built deliberately to that great height, they say, so that its bell might be heard in every corner of the town, and its contado beyond, ringing the hours of work and rest and prayer over all those red roofs. But the bell is silent now. At this hour the tower is only a dark finger laid against the stars, keeping its long watch over the sleeping square, as it has kept it every night for 130 years. Stand here for a while in the quiet and let yourself feel the age of it. This was the older city, the Gothic city, the rival Florence never quite forgot. Its builders raised these pointed arches and this soaring tower in the century before Brunelleschi's dome, in a style all spires and verticals and reaching, and where Florence would go on to fall in love with the round arches and calm proportions of ancient Rome, Siena kept faith with her Gothic dream, and so the two cities, only a night's road apart, came to feel like two different ages of the world standing side by side. There is room in the dark for both of them. Come closer now to the palace, to the great dark doorway at the foot of the tower, and let us slip inside, softly, into the sleeping heart of the town's old government. It is very still in here, and cool, the air thick with the smell of old stone and older wood, and the moonlight falls in long pale bars across the floor from the high windows. We are looking for one room in particular, a chamber high in the palace where the Nine once sat to govern, and where, on its walls, one of the most extraordinary things ever painted still keeps its silent counsel in the dark. For here, more than a century before this night, Ambrogio Lorenzetti covered these walls with a whole vision of the world, an allegory, they call it, of good government and bad, painted so that the men who ruled here might never forget what they were for. On one long wall he set the good city, a town at peace, its towers whole, its shops open, its fields golden beyond the gates, and the people dancing in the streets in a ring, and a bride going to her wedding, and everywhere the sense of a place where justice holds and life goes gently on. Above it he painted the great calm figures of the virtues, peace reclining at her ease, and justice with her scales, and the common good enthroned, bound together by a golden cord that the citizens themselves hold in their hands. And on the wall opposite, in shadow, he set the other city,
the city of bad government, where fear rules and the fields lie waste. But we need not linger there tonight, for the painter's whole argument, the reason he set light against dark, was that the good and the just and the peaceable is the truer thing, the thing worth choosing, and it is the good city we will carry out with us into the dark. Think of it, a theory of how to live well together, of what a just town might be, not written in a book, but painted on a wall, in glowing color, for every governor to sit beneath and answer to. It has hung here in the quiet for a century and a half already, and it hangs here still, and you may stand before it in that same room to this very day. Let us leave it now to its long keeping, and step back out under the stars, and let the town gather us up into its final quiet. Siena settles around you like a great sleeping animal breathing slow. Out through the ward and the parish that the Sienese call the contrade, the little neighborhoods, each with its own name and its own creature, the wave and the tortoise, the owl and the she-wolf and the goose, each a small country within the town, to which a Sienese is born, and to which they belong all their lives. By day the contrade give the town its fierce and joyful color. By night they are only quiet lanes, one folding into the next, each with its darkened doorways and its single guttering lamp, and its household long since gone to bed.
Wander them gently now, down hill and up, the brick underfoot still warm from the vanished sun, the walls close and kind on either side. A cat crosses ahead of you and is gone. A shutter stands ajar in a room where someone sleeps. There is a small worn shrine set into a corner wall, a painted Madonna behind a little grill, and beneath her a lamp burns low all night, one steady flame among the many that keep the town company until dawn. Here and there a fountain stands in a square, its wide stone basin holding a still black mirror of the sky, so quiet the reflected stars do not so much as tremble. Everything is at rest. Everything has been laid down for the night. Above the rooftops the great tower keeps its watch, and above the tower the stars, the very same stars that turned over Florence a few hours and a dream ago, wheel slowly on over the ridges of this older town, and the whole of Siena lies still beneath them, breathing softly in the dark, holding its bright day folded up inside it until the morning. And still the night is not done with us, and the road runs on. And so we leave Siena sleeping on its three ridges, and let the road carry us on south, deeper into the night. The town falls away behind us, its towers dissolving into the dark, and ahead the land opens out and grows older with every mile. This is the pilgrim way that has run south for 1,000 years, the road that carried merchants and monks and kings toward Rome, worn smooth by more feet than anyone could ever count. Beneath the newer ruts, if you knew where to look, lie the great paving stones of the Romans themselves, laid down when this was the road to the center of the world. Let the miles pass gently. The Tuscan hills soften and flatten, the tidy vineyards thinning away, and by slow degrees you come down into a wider, emptier country. This is the Campagna, the broad plain that lies about Rome like a sleeping sea. Under the moon it is a land of long grass and low silvered hills, of scattered stone that might be a shepherd's wall or might be something far older, half swallowed by the earth.
Here and there a broken arch stands alone in a field, an aqueduct that once carried water to 1,000,000 souls, now carrying only the wind. You are not hurried here, and there is nothing to fear in the dark. A shepherd's fire glows small and orange far off across the plain. An owl calls once and falls silent. The road unspools ahead of you, pale in the moonlight, and you follow it the way you follow a thread through a dream, trusting it to take you where it means to go. The night air is warmer here than it was in the hills, soft and heavy with the smell of dry grass and wild thyme crushed underfoot. Fireflies drift low over the fields, a scatter of tiny green lamps rising and fading in the dark. Now and then the road runs straight for a long, long way, arrow straight in the manner only the old builders used, and you understand that you are following a line drawn by Roman surveyors more than 1,000 years before, a road that once ran unbroken from this plain to the far edges of an empire. You are walking into the past by walking south. And then, at last, in the deep of the night, you see it. Not a blaze of light, for this is not a city of 1,000,000 lamps anymore, but there on the horizon, low and dark and vast, the great scattered shape of Rome, its hills and its ruins rising against the stars. The city that was the head of the world lies ahead of you, waiting in the moonlight, and you go down the last of the road toward it.
Come then gently into Rome, and let me tell you what you would truly have found here in these years around the 1480s. For this is one of the strangest and most touching sights in all of history. You have been told of Rome the eternal, Rome of 1,000,000 people, mistress of the world. And once, long ago, all of that was true, but that Rome is long gone. What breathes here now, in Lorenzo's own lifetime, is a small town of perhaps 30,000 living souls, camped like children among the bones of a giant. Picture it softly. Where once 1,000,000 people crowded the 7 hills, now there are cow pastures and vineyards inside the ancient walls. Whole districts have emptied and returned to green. Cattle low in the ruins, and the great heart of the old city, the Forum, the very ground from which Rome had ruled the earth, is now a rough open meadow where sheep graze among the fallen columns. The men of Florence, whom we have walked among all night, look to this place with wonder, for everything they are building up in the north, all their new art and their recovered learning, began as a long, loving act of remembering this. Let us walk out quietly to the greatest of the bones. Ahead of us, rising sheer and enormous out of the dark, stands the vast oval ring of the Colosseum. Even now, even half fallen, it stops the breath. 80 arches march around its curve, tier upon tier of them, climbing so high that the topmost rim is lost against the night. It was raised as a place of spectacle in the 1st century of the empire, and it could hold tens of thousands of the people of old Rome. 1,500 years have passed, and still it stands, the largest thing that human hands had ever made for the gathering of a crowd. Tonight it is only silence and stone. One whole side has fallen away over the long centuries, its blocks carried off to build palaces and churches, so that the great ellipse stands open like a broken crown. Grass grows thick in the arena floor. Wildflowers and ivy trail down the tiers where the crowds once sat, and small trees have taken root high in the arches, whole gardens hanging in the air. Owls nest in the upper galleries.
A fox slips along the base of the wall and is gone. Stand a moment in the moonlight beneath the outer ring and feel how small and how safe you are within it. The stone is cool. Through the arches the moon throws long bars of light and shadow across the ground, and the wind moves in the high broken places with a sound like the sea heard from very far away. The men of the Renaissance come here to measure these arches and to draw them, learning again the old secrets of how to build so high and so strong. And you, tonight, need learn nothing at all. You need only stand within this quiet ring of ages and let its stillness settle over you like a blanket. Lay your hand on the great blocks of pale stone and feel how they were fitted each to each without mortar so cunningly that they have held for 15 centuries. Small holes pock the surface here and there where the old iron cramps were long ago prized out, and in every hollow now a little moss has gathered, and moonlight, and the memory of rain. This was the most famous building in all the world once, and around it the empty grass runs quietly away into the dark. It asks nothing of you. It is simply here, enormous and gentle, keeping the night. Now let me take you to the one place that holds the whole of this long night together. We leave the great ruin behind and go softly through the narrow, sleeping lanes in among the low houses of the living town until we come out into a small square. And there before you stands a building unlike any other in the world. Where all around us Rome lies broken and open to the weather, this one ancient temple stands whole, not restored, not rebuilt, whole, just as it was raised near 1300 years ago under the Emperor Hadrian. This is the Pantheon. Go in through its great bronze doors into the round chamber within and lift your eyes and understand what you are seeing. Above you curves a single vast dome of ancient concrete, perfectly round, so wide across that a sphere set inside this room would touch the floor and the walls and the very crown of the roof all at once. It has stood here, unsupported by any pillar, holding up its great weight through 13 centuries of rain and sun and quiet, and to this very night no one has ever built a dome of unreinforced concrete wider than this one. The Romans raised it, and then the knowing of how they did it was lost for 1,000 years. And at the top, at the dome's very crown, there is no stone at all. There is a great round opening, the oculus, the eye, open to the sky. Through it, right now, the moonlight falls in a soft silver column onto the marble floor, and above it you can see the true stars turning, framed in a ring of ancient stone. Rain falls through it, and the floor is gently sloped to carry the water quietly away. It has always been open. For 1300 years this building has watched the sky through that single round eye and never once closed it. This is why it survived so wholly when all around it fell. Long ago it was made a church, given over from the old gods to a new keeping, and so it was tended and used and loved through all the centuries when other temples were quarried away for their stone. Tonight it is dim and cool and hushed, the moon columns sliding slow across the colored marble, and the great coffered ceiling climbing up into shadow above you, ring upon narrowing ring, drawing your eye gently upward to that one calm circle of stars. Here is the secret of our whole night's journey, and I will tell it to you gently, for it is a beautiful one. Long ago, when the great dome of Florence still seemed an impossible dream, the young goldsmith Filippo Brunelleschi is said to have come south to Rome, to walk among these very ruins, and to stand, as you stand now, beneath this ancient roof, studying how the old builders had turned a curve of stone into a thing that did not fall. The dome that crowns Florence, the marvel we gazed upon at dusk, was not conjured out of nothing. It was remembered. It was drawn from this. The Renaissance, that great rebirth, was never truly an invention. It was a homecoming. The ancient world had been here all along, patient and whole, under its open eye, waiting for someone to look up and remember.
Come out again, softly, from beneath that ancient dome, and stand in the little square, and now look up at the wider sky itself, the same sky that leans over all three of our cities tonight. The very stars that turned above the red rooftops of Florence and above the sloping shell of Siena's square wheel now above these Roman ruins, unchanged, unhurried. One sky over the whole of this dreaming land. Wherever you have wandered tonight, you have wandered beneath it. And here is a gentle thing to hold as you drift, a way of seeing the heavens that everyone alive this night believes with all their heart. For this is still the age before the great change. The book that will move the earth from the center of things has not yet been written. It will not come for another lifetime and more. And so to every soul in Florence and Siena and Rome, and to you, as you lie here beneath these turning stars, the earth sits perfectly still at the center of all creation, and it is the heavens themselves that move. The sun, the moon, the planets, and all the fixed stars are set in vast, clear, turning spheres, one within another, wheeling slowly and forever around the quiet ground where you rest. There is a great peace in that old picture of the world, whatever we now know. To lie still at the very center and to feel the whole shining machinery of the heavens turning gently around you, carrying the stars from horizon to horizon, while you do nothing at all but breathe. Let it be true for you tonight. Let the earth be still, and let the sky do all the turning. There is nowhere you need to go. The night will wheel about you on its own. The same few bright planets that the ancients named are up there now, moving among the fixed stars along their patient tracks, and shepherds on the plain read them for the hour and the season, as their fathers did before them. No one below is troubled by the great questions yet. The sky is simply a slow and glorious wheel, hung with lamps, turning over a sleeping earth, and it has been turning so all night above every roof you have rested beneath. And now we come to the deepest hour of all, the still point of the night, when even a great old city holds its breath. In the narrow lanes of the living town, the last lamps have guttered out. The watchmen make their slow rounds, a soft footfall on worn stone, a lantern swinging low, pausing at a corner, moving on. They keep their quiet vigil over the sleeping streets and want nothing of you but that you rest. Down at the foot of the hills, the old river lies still and dark and gleaming, a long ribbon of moonlight laid across the sleeping city. It moves so slowly and so silently that it seems hardly to move at all, only to hold the light of the moon and the lamps on its glassy surface, and to carry them, without a sound, on toward the sea. The bridges stand black and empty above it. Nothing stirs on the water. It is only quiet and old and calm. It has slid past these same hills since long before there was a Rome to name it,
and it will slide past them long after this night is forgotten, gathering the moonlight and letting it go. And all around, the great ruins keep their long watch in the dark. The broken arches, the standing columns, the vast quiet ellipse, the ancient dome with its single open eye upon the stars. They have stood through more nights than there are grains of sand, and they will stand through this one, patient and untroubled, while the small town sleeps among them and the sheep lie down in the old forum. The whole of Rome, the living and the fallen, rests now beneath the moon, and there is nothing left for you to do but rest here with it, in the deepest and softest hour of the night.
And here, in the last of the night, Rome is almost entirely asleep. The great ruins keep their patient watch under the sinking moon, and the small living city folded among them has gone quiet down to its bones. Yet even now, in this deepest and softest hour, there are a few souls awake before the dawn, and we may walk among them gently, the way you move through a house at night without waking anyone. A watchman comes to the end of his round, his lantern low and steady, his footsteps unhurried on the worn stone. He has walked these lanes all night and seen nothing but cats and stars, and he is glad of it. A quiet night is a good night. He pauses by a broken column that once held up a temple and now holds up nothing but the sky, and he leans there a moment, the way men have leaned against these stones for 1,000 years, and he lets the tiredness settle sweetly into him. Somewhere close, a baker has risen in the dark, as bakers must, and the first warmth is gathering in his oven, while the rest of the world still dreams. There is a scholar, too, who never quite went to bed, a candle guttering low beside a page he cannot bear to leave, his eyes soft now with sleep he is only just beginning to feel. And a pilgrim, arrived late and lodged in some plain room, lies half awake in a strange city, listening to its unfamiliar quiet, feeling very small and very safe beneath the same old turning stars. You do not need to know their names. You need only know that they are here, keeping the last of the night company, so that you do not have to. These are the quiet keepers of the hour before the light, and there have always been such people in every city and every age, the ones who hold the dark open a little longer for everyone else. They are not afraid of the night, and they are not straining toward the day. They simply move through it slowly, at peace, doing the small, gentle work that the small hours ask. And tonight, without knowing it, they are keeping watch over you as well, over the whole long dream of Renaissance Italy you have carried this far. You may let them carry it a while now. Let us rest here a moment with them, in the hush before the grey, and let the whole long night we have travelled gather softly behind us. For we have come a great way tonight, you and I, further than any road could carry us. We began at dusk on the red rooftops of Florence, small city of the florin and the dome, and we watched its lamps come up one by one. We slipped south under the stars to Siena on its 3 ridges, and stood in the sloping shell of its great square while the town slept around us. And we came on to Rome, oldest of them all, to walk among the moonlit bones of a city that once held 1,000,000 souls. 3 cities, 1 night, and now the night is nearly done. And here, in the quiet, is the gentlest truth of all that we have seen. They called it the Rinascita, the rebirth, and we picture it as a sudden dawn switched on after 1,000 dark years. But that is not quite what it was. It was less an invention than a remembering.
Those Florentine painters and bankers and scholars did not conjure the modern world out of nothing. They leaned back against the ancient one and found it had been waiting for them all along. Think of the young goldsmith Brunelleschi, who came south to these very ruins as a young man, long before he was famous, and wandered among the fallen temples with a measuring cord, studying how the ancients had raised their vaults. And then think of what he learned to build. The greatest of Rome's survivors, the Pantheon, had stood already for 13 centuries, with its vast dome open to the sky, patient, whole, saying nothing and teaching everything. It had waited all that time, through every quiet century, for a curious man from Florence to come and look up into it and understand. And when he went home, he raised over his own cathedral the largest brick dome the world had ever seen. The old dome taught the new one. The ancient world and the new leaned on each other across 1,000 years, and neither could have stood alone. That is the secret the whole night has been carrying toward you. The light of the Renaissance was not a fire lit in an empty room. It was an old lamp found again and gently rekindled. The monks in their cold cloisters had kept the texts alive through all the long between years, copying them by candlelight, so that Ficino would have a Plato to translate at all. Nothing truly begins from nothing. We are always leaning back on the ones who came before and lighting our small lamp from theirs. And there is something restful in that thought, something that loosens the shoulders, for it means no one has ever had to build the whole world alone. Those clever, dazzling Florentines, whom we imagine springing fully formed into a new age, were in truth surrounded on every side by gifts, ancient walls, ancient words, ancient, patient stone, all quietly handed forward through the centuries by people whose names are long since lost. They only had to look and love what they found and carry it a little further. That is all any of us are asked to do. Look and love what we find and carry it a little further, and then, when we are tired, lay it down and let the next hands take it up. And here is the tender part, the part worth carrying down into sleep. Almost all of it is still here. This was not a dream you must wake from and lose. So much of this long night can still be touched. The dome is still there. Brunelleschi's impossible dome still stands over Florence, exactly as it did that dusk, the largest masonry dome ever raised, and you can climb it, up between its two shells, past the herringbone brick he laid without a net beneath him, out into the light at the top, where the whole red city lies at his feet, just as it lay at his. The gold florin is there too, in the quiet drawer of a museum, that small trusted coin that was once good from London to the Levant, cool and heavy and real, waiting behind glass for anyone who cares to look. Botticelli's Primavera still stands upon its wall, the spring he painted in those very years, the flowers as fresh as the season they were made in. In Siena, the great shell of the Campo still slopes to its slender tower, and inside the Palazzo, the good city and the bad still keep their painted watch on the wall where Lorenzetti left them, nearly 7 centuries on. And in Rome, the Pantheon still stands, whole and roofed and open to the weather, the oculus still round with sky, the rain still falling now and then through that one bright hole onto a floor that has been swept for nearly 1900 years. You could walk into it this very afternoon. You could stand where Brunelleschi stood and look up where he looked, and the light would fall on you exactly as it fell on him. That is the warm thing to hold. The night we have walked was not lost when its people slept. Their dome, their coin, their painted spring, their ancient open sky, all of it is still here, still standing, still waiting to be touched by anyone who comes gently looking. Time did not take it. Time, for once, was kind and kept it for us.
So this was never a place you had to grieve leaving. It is not gone, and you are not shut out of it. Whenever you wish, in daylight or in dream, you may go back and stand in the cool, round shade of the Pantheon, or climb the winding stair inside the dome, or lean close to the glass above a small worn coin of gold, and the far night we have traveled will be there to meet you, patient as it always was. Nothing tonight needs mourning. It is only sleeping, the way the cities are sleeping, the way you are beginning to sleep, waiting quietly to be visited again. And now, far off, comes the first grey of the dawn. You cannot quite see it yet, you only feel it. The dark over Rome has thinned from black to the deep soft blue that comes before all colour, and along the low line of the eastern hills there is the faintest paleness, no more than a breath of light. The stars are still there, but fewer now and gentler, as though they too are beginning to lower their eyes toward sleep. The still Tiber, glassy and quiet all night below the sleeping ruins, begins to hold that first grey in its surface like a mirror laid down flat. The city is stirring, but so slowly, so kindly that you would hardly call it waking. Somewhere in the pale streets a bell rings once for the first prayer of the morning, soft and far, and lets its single note fade all the way out into the fields before it dares to ring again. A shutter is eased open. A cart begins somewhere its patient early journey. The baker's warmth becomes the smell of bread. The watchman turns for home. None of it hurries. The dawn does not arrive. It seeps, the way ink seeps into water, filling the old city so gently that not one sleeper need be disturbed. There is no threshold to it, no moment you could point to and say, there, now, it is morning. The grey only deepens toward silver, and the silver begins, somewhere far off, to warm. The colours have not yet come. The world is still a soft charcoal drawing of itself, all shape and no hue, the ruins and the rooftops sketched in tender greys against a paling sky. It is perhaps the most peaceful light there is, this light before the colours, a held breath, a long, slow easing open, asking nothing, promising the day, but not yet insisting on it. And you are not being called to rise with it. Let the city wake without you. You may lie here in the growing grey and simply feel the night hand itself over to the day, the way one tired friend hands a candle to another and goes at last to rest. Now the light finds the rooftops. It comes to them softly, the way it always has, touching first the highest tiles and the tips of the towers, while the streets below stay pooled in shadow. In Rome, the low sun warms the broken marble to honey and gilds the round back of the Pantheon and lays a long, quiet gold along the sleeping forum. And in the same moment, though there are nights dreaming away to the north, Florence and Siena are catching that same light on their own rooftops, the red tiles of Florence going warm around the great dome, the towers of Siena
burning gold above the shell of the Campo. 3 cities, so far apart on the map, all turning their faces to the one sun at once. Hold them together there in the mind, where distance does not matter, and the whole journey can be seen at a single glance. The dome and the shell-shaped square and the ancient open temple, all lit by the same soft morning, all part of one long night you have carried from dusk to dawn. This is where they truly live now, not on any road you could drive, but here, in the quiet gallery behind your eyes, 3 golden cities waking gently together.
And it is the same sun, remember, that rises on them and on you. The same star that rose over Lorenzo's Florence and over the sheep in the old Forum, rising still 500 years and more downstream, over wherever you are lying now. The people of that far night looked up at the very stars you looked up at earlier this evening, and warmed themselves at the very light that will find your window in its own good time. There is only the one sky, after all, stretched thin and kind over all the centuries at once, holding the sleepers of every age in the same soft hand. And their people are waking with them. In Florence the workshops will open, and the pigment will be ground, and the ledgers ruled into their columns of debit and credit. In Siena the lanes will fill. In Rome the sheep will move again among the fallen columns of the old Forum, and the pilgrim will rise and go on his way. All of them stepping softly into an ordinary morning 5 centuries and more ago, never knowing that on some far quiet night a listener would travel back to keep watch over their sleep. They are all sleeping still in the last moment before the light truly finds them. The painters and the bankers and the scholars, the watchman gone home to his bed, the baker with his warm bread, the whole gentle world of that far Renaissance night at rest, as you, perhaps, are sleeping now. There is nothing more to see and nothing you need do. The journey is complete. The 3 cities are safe in the morning and safe in your memory, and they ask nothing of you at all now but that you rest. So let go of the last of it, whatever you are still holding. Let the dome and the coin and the painted spring drift softly out of your open hands. Let the road unspool behind you into the dark. Let the gray dawn over Rome go on brightening without you, and let yourself sink down, down, past all the old cities and all the turning stars, into the deep and easy quiet you have earned. Sleep well, and when you are ready to travel again, Nox Historia will be waiting. Good night.